This was like walking into a Silicon Valley Salesforce conference. It was so different and well executed. It was like an Oracle event, a Salesforce event, huge Miami Beach Convention Center, lots of money everywhere. It was just a celebration of money and success is really what it felt like.
Bitcoin conference in Miami. Two-part question. How was it? Second part, did you visit any venues that involved any prime numbers?
First of all, how about that intro?
Well done, Nicky boy.
That was so much better than me. Like, I'm firing myself. Like, that was a quick, you're fired.
I like your voice so much better.
Thank you.
Better voice.
Thank you. But I love that you gave me the agenda up front. Like, as a listener, I'm pleased right now. So how was it? And prime numbers? No prime numbers this trip.
Good.
I think that's the Chamath question.
They accept
right?
ApeCoin, I think.
They do.
You have some
apparently. Put a deposit down on the residents. No prime numbers, but wow. So we all went to ETH Denver together, right? And I mean, 180 degrees, the complete opposite. Like, I think we talked about this a little bit, but imagine, like, I mean, you guys saw ETH Denver. So ETH Denver, and we talked about it in a previous episode. It was maybe 3 episodes ago. And that was a shit show. It was unorganized. It was totally like volunteer run. There was no fee for the ticket. It took 4 hours to get in. It took another 3 hours to get into the venue. You know, it was insane. This was like walking into a Silicon Valley Salesforce conference. It was so different and well executed. I mean, I'm talking about, I couldn't tell whether I was it was like an Oracle event, a Salesforce event, huge Miami Beach Convention Center, lots of money everywhere. It was just a celebration of money and success is really what it felt like. It was like, we're number one. And
For now.
Isn't that most people's, I guess, negative about it that they don't like? It's like, you know, I don't want to see a bunch of douchebags just talking about how their bag's just pumped. But is that what it is, or did you learn things?
No, I didn't think it was that. I didn't actually mind it. But guess, you know, I'm not a ETH maxi. ETH is my favorite coin and ecosystem and software. Like, I look at it, they're all software to me, right? And they all have a reason to exist. But like, I didn't look at it that way. I enjoyed the vibe. I thought the people that were there were like super cool, super friendly. It was a different energy. Like, at ETH Denver, people want to talk about what they're building. They want to talk about the philosophy. At Bitcoin, they want to make deals. Like, everyone wants to make deals and wants to make more money.
What type of deals are we talking
Venture deals, investment deals, partnership deals related to crypto in some format, maybe even outside of crypto. Just a lot of people with money, man. Like OG.
But not necessarily like involving Bitcoin specifically.
It could. Not necessarily because, you know, what are you doing other than mining?
Right.
Like, people are either mining or they were talking about the Lightning Network.
So that's the thing I heard, is that the Bitcoin mining companies were there in a massive presence because there's a handful of publicly traded mining companies. And so were they big sponsors? Were they splashing around sponsorship dollars everywhere? Was that pretty obvious when you got there?
So like, I mean, at ETH Denver, right, the show area, the expo area was just like so basic, right? It was just like these little booths, and each company had like t-shirts and a couple snacks. This was like robots and, you know, I mean, just a whole different level. Like, there was one company that had like their podcast happening live on a stage. You know,
could have been
there
us,
was like in the middle of a huge convention center. Another one was like had their mining rig. There's multiple like
Bitmain or
like
whatever.
that.
Like, yeah,
there were so many. And then actually one of the coolest things that I saw was, you know, the New York Stock Exchange, the bull. Mm-hmm. So there was like a Bitcoin bull that somebody built. Yeah.
Looked awesome.
It was awesome.
Was it missing anything?
It had no balls.
It had no balls?
No.
It was a beautiful thing.
It's a robot bull.
It was a robot bull.
Cool.
Really makes you think.
So were you taken by anything that made you more or less bullish on Bitcoin itself?
One of the things that was interesting is like nobody brought up any other coin, and the speakers would even like have this like funny thing where if they needed to refer to it, it was like, I'm talking about the coin that shall not be named.
That ETH coin?
So even though there was this like huge focus on Bitcoin in the talks and in the conference, it was almost like a rule. I felt like the conversations and where all the alpha is always outside of the conference. It's at the events, it's at the happy hours, it's at the parties. That's the way we typically roll, right? And outside the conference, there was no like Bitcoin maxi talk happening. It was just, I'm passionate about crypto, I work in crypto, I'm building in crypto, let's make deals together. So it made me walk away from it going like, this is an important event to be at because of the auxiliary events and the people that attend. So even though it's a Bitcoin event, I think it's really important to be at. For me, at least, I really enjoyed it.
So no Bitcoin Alpha.
I mean, there was a lot of interesting announcements. A lot of companies made.
Yeah, can we talk about a few of those?
Yeah,
Sounds like,
I mean, you were reading about the Strike announcement.
yeah.
before this.
So Strike is a company that's trying to facilitate cheap, instant global transactions using, and they describe it as using Bitcoin technology.
They're not trying. They're doing it.
Yeah, they're doing it.
Where you can use Bitcoin to pay for things.
Right, where the merchants, I think, can, and this is where I get a little confused. Like, are they accepting Bitcoin? I know they can accept US dollars, so maybe it transacts.
Strike just uses the Bitcoin network to settle the payments. It doesn't actually involve transferring Bitcoin. Like you can send me like dollars, you can send like British pounds, and it basically uses the Bitcoin network to kind of swap those immediately. Like initially it was using Tether. I don't know if it's still using Tether. But it's like an interesting application because it's this idea of Bitcoin being sort of like a settlement network, right? The idea that you don't actually need to possess or take on any exchange risk with the Bitcoin. You can use the network purely to just send cash.
And is this on the Lightning Network, which is Bitcoin's layer 2? We talked about layer 2's the ETH a lot, but like,
have you used Strike?
I haven't. I was just looking at it before we started recording, and they have a mobile app and whatnot, but I haven't played with it.
It's pretty impressive.
It's impressive.
Like it's just money
Instant.
sent. Instant.
But it's not instant when I send Bitcoin to someone. So like, how is it
Lightning.
Okay, so on the layer 2, it's
On the
instant.
layer 2.
Yeah.
Got it.
Yeah.
Okay.
There was a rumor going around that Strike was going to announce like that they were partnering with Apple Pay
Yeah,
or something.
that was the big rumor.
But that never materialized, right?
It's still a good announcement,
But
right?
so they announced Shopify, Stripe, and a handful of others, like some McDonald's, some major retailers. Which I think Stripe is the most important one because Stripe Payments kind of is like the underlying processor for things like Uber and Lyft and all kinds of other like apps we use every day.
I mean, the implications of it are like potentially crazy, right? Because when you're doing these credit card payments, it's like 3%, 3%, 3%, sometimes more, right?
Yeah.
So if you're a merchant, I think you use Strike or Lightning to take payments, it's like nothing. Or
So-
if you're like Apple, right, and you're doing billions and billions of like Apple Pay transfers via like if like people are using credit cards for stuff like that, like if you're Apple, you could just pocket that and it would be like the customer would see no difference. It'd be like
I play the role as a merchant and I see it on our P&L, 3 to 4% of your revenue, of your gross revenue just goes to credit card processing, which is not fun.
So let me step in the shoes of like Apple Payments. Like you wouldn't want to tie yourself to one exclusively, right? You would want to be able to use the Lightning Network and use Bitcoin rails, but then you'd also probably want to be able to settle on layer 2 of another chain or whatever, right? Like you'd want to be able to like just process payments of all sorts.
Yeah, it seems like Jack Mahler, who runs Strike, is just turning into a business development machine. And I think there'll be equivalents. I watched a little YouTube video by Peter Thiel. Some funny moments in that. If you want,
He was fired up.
He was quite fired up.
You see that live?
No.
He named the enemies of Bitcoin. And he also kind of had this weird analogy of like comparing ETH to Visa in terms of valuation, which I thought was like, I usually respect most of his perspectives, but that seemed a little weird to pigeonhole ETH as like relative to the Visa network. But yeah, he talked about that, there will certainly be payment processing going on using crypto and hopefully without the fees. As a merchant, I would love that. The question I have is when it comes to consumers, like, let's be honest, Bitcoin and ETH are speculative assets right now. We buy them and own them because we think they're going to go up. So if I think they're going to go up, why would I ever want to spend my Bitcoin, and maybe this is speaking as a U.S. resident, it might be different in other countries, but why would I want to give someone my Bitcoin if I think it's going to go up 20x over the next 8-10 years?
I have no interest in that.
Right. So are we just building things to build, and maybe the demand will fill in later?
I think that benefit is different in another country, right?
El Salvador as an example.
Yeah, just any other country where even just making payments to employees in other countries, right? By the time they were receiving it a few years ago, the volatility made it so that, by lunchtime they may have lost 20%. And so, but it's still allowed for a lot of companies and businesses here to send money to people abroad without middlemen. Like, that's the whole point, right? But today I think that the effect of that is going to be a lot different. Like, being able to actually do that for people abroad is a lot different than what is here for us. It's like this gold that we don't want to let go of.
Yeah.
Over there, it's a totally different story.
I put up a little QR code accepting ETH at a recent art show. No one paid me an ETH, and someone passed by and was like, "I'm not giving you my ETH." That was a joke. And I was like, "All right, it's fair enough. Just trying. Trying is my best." But I think I would like the future to be like a stable coin that I use,
right?
And maybe it's backed by Bitcoin. That seems like reasonable at some point in the future. But like, it'd be nice if it was instant without the fees, but it was a stable coin where there's no volatility risk from me as a consumer, and I'm sure the merchant appreciates it too. So I don't know. Maybe it evolves into that, but Bitcoin doesn't have a decentralized exchange. They don't have like stable coins. They don't have these things. Don't exist. So I find it hard to like see further past these really cool business announcements and partnerships. But one step, I guess the step has to happen before we move to the next one.
Yeah.
Maybe.